All right, so hi everybody. This is Mike Brightman with Brightman Designs, and we specialize in 3D modeling, visualization, primarily using SketchUp and Lumion to get the job done. So you can always check out what we're up to at brightmandesigns.com. And then we do also have some other websites like SketchUp Exchange. So SketchUp Exchange is our forum, and you can access SketchUp 101 there and also post on the forums, and we do answer a lot of those questions. And then furthermore, we have our new plugin out, which is the Condoc Tools for SketchUp Pro. If you're interested in creating construction documents using SketchUp Pro, check that out. It's a very streamlined workflow and addresses a lot of the requirements of a present-day BIM system. So with that said, today we're just doing an online help session. The whole session will take about an hour. And to keep things interesting, I'm just going to chat for about 15 minutes about plugins. And so the big thing with plugins is that you really, if you've ever wondered why SketchUp doesn't really have a whole lot of new features when they're coming out with new versions and updates, it's really because there's new features available every day, and that's through plugins. So there's a couple. Really, plugins allow you to work smart rather than hard. So you can find plugins in a couple different places. So let me show you some of those. The Ruby Library Depot. So at the Ruby Library Depot, the best way to get to that is to type into a Google search, Ruby Library Depot. And then we can get to this long list. It says plugins from A to Z. There's a ton of plugins in here. So you can grab these, and plugins are essentially, they're called plugins, extensions, Ruby scripts, but typically they're an RB file, and you have to install it into SketchUp, and then it makes SketchUp do something else. So this is one great place to grab a ton of free plugins. Another excellent place for plugins is smustard.com. If you go there, some of these are free, and some of these are paid for. So one of my favorite plugins here, the CAD cleanup, the delete short lines, those are great, and also the dashed line plugin is great. So lots of good stuff here as well, smustard.com. And then one of the newer additions and one of the latest releases of SketchUp was they added the extension warehouse. This is kind of like an app store for SketchUp. So this you can access online, or you can run it through SketchUp. And I'm going to show you how to track down these plugins and install them, because it is just a little bit confusing with all the different ways that you can install plugins, and then also the different RB versus RBZ, and then how to use them. So let's jump into SketchUp and just take a look at the first thing we want to do is there's three different ways to install plugins. So one is to track down your plugin folder. Now, the plugins folder used to be really straightforward. It was under like C, program files, SketchUp, and then it just made a lot of sense. You went in there and there was a plugins folder. But in SketchUp 2014, so you can no longer just go to this straightforward place. It's kind of this roaming location that works on your machine. So we actually have a plugin called Plugin Popup. And so I'm going to provide a link to that plugin along with the post of this video. But Plugin Popup, when I click on it, it automatically opens my plugins folder. And you can see that the actual location of that is like C, users, app data, roaming. It seems to be very difficult to navigate to that. So it's much easier just to click on the plugins and then choose Plugin Popup. Okay. So that's how we access our plugins folder. So if you're downloading an RB file from either Smustard or from the Ruby Library Depot, you would just download that file and then copy and paste it into your plugins folder. So that's one way to install plugins. Now the other way is if you come across an RBZ. And so when you go and download the plugin pop-up, that is actually an RBZ file. So to install that plugin, you're going to go to Window, Preferences, under Extensions, and then you click on Install Extension. And then you're going to navigate to the place where you save it. So mine, I think it's in my Resources, Plugins, and I called this Plugin Pop-Up. So I would just select this and choose Open, and then it's going to install automatically, and then you'll be able to go up here and choose plugins and get to your plugin folder to install plugins the old way. So we've covered two different ways: installing an RB file and then also installing an RBZ file. So now what we want to do, though, is take a look at ideally this is going to be the only way to install plugins in the future. And hopefully this gets real streamlined to the point where this will just take all your plugins from that you've been installing over the years and kind of migrate them to all of your new installs of SketchUp. Because right now it's a little bit painful when you upgrade. You got to go and get all that stuff installed again. So I'll click on the window drop down and go to the extension warehouse. Now when I click on the extension warehouse, I can search in here. So there's several different ways to find things, and you can search for like drawing. There's probably a bunch of scripts that make the drawing tools do different things. Dieback is cool. It's fun to experiment with these. The Bezier curve tool is pretty cool. So just go through there and you can install things, and then you can also uninstall them from here. So one of the plugins that I want to show you today is the Shape Bender. So our Shape Bender tool, this one, it's really slick. You can model something as a very straightforward linear object, and then you can apply this plugin and bend that linear object along a curve. So if you have a really complex ramp or road or staircase or even like a countertop, like a bar shape or a reception desk, it's so much easier to build those shapes in a linear style in SketchUp, and then at the end use the Shape Bender to bend that and create the final shape. So let me open up this demo file. I think I've got this. I threw this together a week or so ago. Let me navigate to my Dropbox and open that. All right. Okay, so let me just do something here. This is actually an older version, but my staircase is in good shape. I want to create a counter that looks something like this. So to do that with my Shape Bender tool, actually let me start over. To build this with the native tools in SketchUp would be very difficult. I'd have to use my arc tool and be very precise and kind of set up the arc that I want. And then I would have to offset all that and then fill it in so that it actually creates the faces, and then I'd have to pull it up and start to offset. And once I've built curves in SketchUp, it becomes a lot more difficult for me to edit. So what I prefer to do is I would just draw like a 2 foot by 2 foot square and pull it up by, say, 36. And then let's pull it this way by 8 more feet, so we know that this thing is 10 feet long. All right, so then typically if I'm doing like a cash wrap or a reception counter, I'd copy that up by 4, push it back by 2, and then let's just add some kind of, we'll copy this up by actually let me push this down by 1.5, tap Control and pull it back up by 1.5, give that a little bit of an overhang there. And then we'll add a little bit more detail. So I'm going to copy that up and give it 6 divisions. And then I'm just going to pull these materials over here and do something kind of like I already did. And then I'll pull my wood out by 1 inch and then double click. And so now we're kind of in good shape with our counter. So you can see how easy it is to build linear objects in SketchUp. It's when you start getting into those curves that it becomes a little bit more problematic to edit. Not to say that you can't do it, it's just that it's a little bit trickier. So the way that this plugin works, though, is I have to have a couple things. So usually, I think it's typically best. Let's make this a little bit longer, actually. Pull this out by another 5 feet. All right, so I want to make this into a group. So I just triple click and then right click and choose Make Group. Now the way that this plugin works, though, so I've got a curve right here that I've already drawn. So we'll just draw another one. I'll just say like an arc like this, and then an arc like that. All right, so now I have to have a line on the red axis. So if I actually draw a line, I'll just draw it right along here, and then you can see that there's that simple line just sitting right on that edge. Because what this plugin does is it's going to ask me to select that line that's on the red axis, and then that line is going to be applied to this curve. So let's get our shape vendor tool out. So once you've installed that shape vendor through the extension warehouse, you can go to View Toolbars, and then let's see, I have my shape vendor. Oh, what's my toolbar? Here's my shape vendor toolbar. Okay, so it's already open. Okay, so the way that this works is I need to pre-select. It's always a good idea to save. So I'm just going to save this before I do anything. Anytime you run a plugin, it's always a good idea to save. I pre-select my counter. I click on my shape vendor tool, and then check it out. At the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, it says, please select a single line that lies on the red axis. And that's this one. Now, please select a curve to bend the shape to. And that's this. All right, so now, it kind of looks like it's a little bit messed up, but we have some more options here. We have enter equals accept, and then up equals toggle the curve, and then down equals toggle the line. So when I toggle that line, I get the results I want. So you got to kind of toggle your. When I toggle my line, I can see that it's happening. It's placing that edge that I drew either on the inside or the outside is essentially what's happening. So it just depends on where you want that. And I think this looks good, so I'll hit enter. And now I've applied that shape to this complex curve. And I can tell you that method of building this counter was infinitely faster than trying to build this from scratch and master all of those arcs and radiuses. It's so easy because then you can just tap undo, and maybe you want to like make it a little bit more dramatic. And so we would go back to our shape vendor tool and just run that again. Like that. So that one's not quite right, but we'll just try like that. And now it goes on the inside like that. So you can experiment without having to rebuild these things over and over. Now, one project that we worked on, we did a rendering for an architect who was doing a project for Under Armour. And we had this really funky staircase that had to be bent in the shape of the Under Armour logo. So rather than trying to model every single step and then create that curve and plot those points, all you have to do is draw your wall. So let's just say we have like a curved wall like this, and we'll offset our wall by 8 inches. And then we'll just fill in the ends so that we can push-pull that thing up. And I'll pull this up by, let's say, 20 feet. I'll go to my materials and apply some concrete. Okay, so let's say that we want this staircase to bend along this wall. Well, what I need to do is I need to first make a copy of this curve. So I'm just going to use my move tool and create a copy. And then I need to define that line on the red axis. So pretty much what I want that to be is from this point, we could even say this point to this point. And see how I've locked it on the red axis so it's not going up at an angle. And then typically, just to keep things clean, I just move this straight down and snap there. Okay, so now what I really want, though, is I want for the line to be on this edge of my staircase, because I want this edge of my staircase to bend along that line. All right. So now the other thing I need to do, though, is I don't want to bend this staircase along the entire line. I want to trim this curve a bit. So I'm just going to kind of overlap some of these edges to trim them. Like that. And then let's just break those up. Okay. And then this curve, I might even be able to add a few. We're not going to add segments because we want it to be the same segmentation as what we have going on here. All right, so that's how you kind of get this set up. And then I'm going to save. I'll pre-select my staircase. I'll click on my shape vendor tool. Please select a single line that lies on the red axis. I'll click on there. Now select a shape to bend to, and we'll do that curve. And then I just need to kind of toggle my arrows a little bit so it looks like that is the curve that I want. You can kind of see that preview happening there. So I'll hit enter. Final shape has been bent, and then I'll just move. I'll move this entire new staircase against my wall, and I can get rid of the old one. So I mean, I can tell you and maybe it would have been better to build our wall with a couple more segments to get a smoother curve. But I can tell you that the task of plotting those points and getting that staircase to go up that wall, this plugin saves an immense amount of time. So just remember to work smart, not hard. If you ever find yourself clicking through a model and performing some really tedious task, it's almost guaranteed that somebody else has already come across that problem and then created a Ruby script for it and thrown it out there, either for a couple dollars or for free. And so just go track that down, and then you'll save yourself a lot of time.